Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Silence reigned in the hospital room, heavy and oppressive. The machines beeped faintly, helpless witnesses to the desperate battle waged by a 10-year-old boy. His frail body was covered in bandages, and each breath seemed a victory. The doctors had exchanged somber glances all morning, their words weighing like stones. "We've done everything we can, there's nothing more we can do." His mother, her eyes red with fatigue and tears, held his hand with a strength betrayed by her voice. "No, he can't go, not now," she murmured, her breath trembling. But the experts had given up all hope, convinced that fate had already decided. Then, a faint noise was heard near the bed. It was him. His eyes shone with a strange light, a determination no one had ever seen in that frail body. In a weak but steady voice, he simply said, "Let me try." Everyone froze. How could a child understand what years of study and advanced techniques had failed to achieve? The doctors exchanged incredulous glances. His mother felt her heart beat faster, a mixture of fear and hope. The boy gently placed his hands on his chest, and time seemed to slow down. An otherworldly calm filled the room. And then, the miracle happened. The heart monitor, which had been frozen until then, suddenly sprang to life. A regular, strong, and powerful rhythm illuminated everyone's eyes with hope. His mother's tears flowed, but this time they were filled with joy. The doctors, stunned, had never seen anything so incredible. No one understood how, or why, but what was certain was that this little boy had just defied destiny itself. St. Mary's Hospital was plunged into an almost surreal silence. The white corridors reflected the fluorescent lights, and the antiseptic smell seemed to stifle every breath. In room 312, 10-year-old Lucas Harper lay on the bed, surrounded by machines and tubes. Every movement required immense effort, and yet his gaze betrayed neither fear nor resignation. The doctors had given up hours ago. Dr. Reynolds, the head of the department, shook his head in a mixture of disbelief and exhaustion. I don't know what to say. We've tried everything," he murmured to his assistant, Dr. Miller. The tension in the room was palpable. Beside the bed, Emily Harper, his mother, held his hand tightly. Her red eyes betrayed exhaustion and fear. "My baby, don't leave me, not now," she sobbed softly. She watched Lucas's every breath as if it were a fragile miracle, about to fade away. Lucas, meanwhile, watched the adults with astonishing concentration. His eyes shone with an intensity his mother had never seen before. In a weak but clear voice, he murmured, "Let me try." The doctors froze. Dr. Reynolds frowned. "Try, what?" "Lucas, you haven't." He didn't finish his sentence. Even he, with all his years of experience, didn't know how to react. Emily felt a mixture of worry and hope wash over her. She nodded slowly. "Okay, try it. Anything you want, my love." Lucas closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He placed his hands on his chest, where his heart struggled to beat properly. An otherworldly calm filled the room, as if time had stopped. The machines beeped softly, but their rhythm seemed to harmonize with an invisible breath Lucas was emitting. Then, slowly, the heart monitor emitted a louder first beep, followed by a second. The tension in the room shattered. The heartbeat returned to a steady, strong rhythm. Emily burst into tears of joy, clutching her son tightly. "Oh my God, my baby, you're..." Dr. Reynolds and Dr. Miller stood frozen, speechless. No protocol, no science, no technology could have explained what they had just seen. It was beyond anything they knew. Lucas opened his eyes, a small smile on his lips, tired but serene. "It's okay, now," he said simply. And yet, behind this quiet statement, something much greater was hidden, a power that no one could have ever imagined. This moment marked the beginning of a journey that would defy medicine, logic, and destiny itself. For Lucas Harper was no ordinary boy, and the miracle was only the beginning. In the days that followed, St. Mary's Hospital was filled with a quiet commotion. Nurses whispered in the corridors, doctors consulted in low voices, and visitors cast intrigued glances toward room 312. Lucas Harper had become the center of attention, but no one yet understood how a child could perform a miracle that even modern medicine had not been able to achieve. Emily stayed by his side day and night. She struggled to hide her worry. "My darling, are you in pain?" she asked, gently placing her hand on his head. Lucas shook his head, a slight smile on his lips, but his eyes told a different story. He knew something had changed inside him. Something powerful. The first tangible evidence came a few days later. While Dr. Reynolds was reviewing Lucas's file, another patient, a man in his 50s, suffered a cardiac arrest in a neighboring room. The doctors panicked, running with defibrillators and medications. Lucas, lying on his bed, calmly observed the scene. He took a deep breath, placed his hands in front of him as if trying to reach the man through the walls, and closed his eyes. A few moments later, the monitors in the man's room went haywire, then returned to a steady rhythm. The man was breathing again, his eyes slowly opening. Dr. Reynolds and the other doctors were stunned. How is this possible?" he murmured, unable to find a rational explanation. Emily, holding Lucas close, couldn't hold back her tears. "You saved someone, again," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. But Lucas knew he had to remain discreet. He wasn't ready to reveal the full extent of his abilities. He felt a power awakening within him, a power that surpassed anything he had imagined. A force that could heal, protect, perhaps even change the world. And yet, with this gift came a heavy responsibility. Each use of his power exhausted him immensely, and sometimes he saw fleeting images of what might happen if he failed. Visions of danger, suffering, chaos. It frightened him, but it didn't deter him. He knew what he was doing was right. It was that evening, when the hospital was almost empty, that Lucas confided his secret to his mother. "Mom, I think I can do more than just get better," he said, his voice trembling but serious. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. She knew her son wasn't an ordinary child, but hearing those words spoken with such certainty made her realize that their lives had just changed forever. Outside the room, curious glances began to gather. Soon, Lucas Harper's miracle would no longer be a secret. And with this revelation, the lives of the boy and his mother would change forever. The following weeks were a mixture of wonder and tension. Lucas Harper was beginning to understand that his power wasn't limited to isolated actions. Every breath, every movement, every thought seemed capable of influencing the world around him. But with this burgeoning ability came intense fatigue and disturbing visions, flashes of possible futures where evil prevailed. One morning, as the sun filtered through the curtains of room 312, Emily entered with breakfast. She found Lucas sitting with his eyes closed, his hands slightly raised in front of him as if he were trying to touch something invisible. "Lucas," she murmured softly. "What are you doing?" He slowly opened his eyes, and in their brightness, Emily saw an almost supernatural concentration. "I'm trying to understand what I can do." This time, the test was voluntary. Lucas reached out to a flower pot on the nightstand, and slowly, the plant straightened, its withered leaves coming back to life as if drinking in an invisible rain. Emily recoiled, her mouth open, unable to believe what she was seeing. "My God! Lucas, this is incredible." But this miracle also attracted the attention of others. In the hospital corridors, rumors circulated: the boy, he saved a man, then a plant. The stares became more insistent, some full of admiration, others of suspicion. This newfound fame soon had repercussions. An elegant man with salt and pepper hair, dressed in a dark suit and with piercing eyes, appeared in Lucas's room. He introduced himself as Dr. Victor Langley, an independent researcher specializing in extraordinary phenomena. "I'm here to help you, Lucas, but you need to understand the nature of what you're capable of. This power," he said seriously, "can change lives, but it can also attract dangers you can't even imagine yet. Emily felt a shiver of worry. She knew the outside world could be cruel, and now that Lucas was showing his abilities, they would never be safe again. You must promise that you won't hurt him, she insisted. Dr. Langley nodded gravely. I promise, but you have to learn, Lucas. Learn to control this power, otherwise. He trailed off, casting an ominous shadow over the room. That night, as Lucas finally slept after an intense day, he dreamed of vast lights, burning cities, and frightened faces. He understood that his power wasn't just a gift of healing, it was an immense responsibility. Every decision could affect lives, sometimes far beyond what he could have imagined. And as the night wore on, a certainty grew in his heart: he had to master his gift, but he wouldn't be alone. For those who had noticed him weren't all benevolent. And Lucas Harper's true challenge was only just beginning. In the days that followed, Lucas Harper began to emerge from the shadows of his room to test his power in real-life situations. With Emily always by his side, he started with small acts, healing an elderly patient in the hallway, easing the pain of a child paralyzed by an injury, or reviving withered plants in the hospital garden. Each miracle attracted attention, and soon, Lucas's name was circulating like a legend at St. Mary's. But with the light comes the shadow. As he struggled to understand the scope of his gift, more powerful and less well-intentioned individuals began to take notice of the child. Dr. Victor Langley, ever discreet but attentive, warned Emily one evening. Emily, you must be careful. Not everyone who is interested in Lucas has good intentions. Some want to use his power to control, manipulate, or even exploit him. Emily felt an icy chill run down her spine. But, how can we protect him? She asked, squeezing Lucas's hand, who, sitting on the bed, seemed to understand without a word. The first confrontation came sooner than they had imagined. A man in a dark suit, accompanied by 2 assistants, tried to enter Lucas's room under the pretext of scientific tests. Their gaze was cold, calculating, and the aura emanating from them sent a shiver down Emily's spine. Lucas, despite his young age, immediately understood the danger. He closed his eyes and focused his energy. A wave of heat, gentle yet powerful, swept through the room. The visitors stopped dead in their tracks, frozen as if paralyzed by an invisible force. They reluctantly retreated, unable to approach any closer. Emily, stunned, watched her son open his eyes, his face calm but determined. You can't come in, he said in a firm but serene voice. The men, unable to speak or move, finally backed away and left the room. This victory revealed a truth to Emily and Lucas: her power could be used not only to heal, but also to protect. But each use required enormous effort and left Lucas exhausted. That evening, Emily sat next to her son, gently stroking his hair. Lucas, you're incredible, but you have to take it easy. You're just a child. Lucas nodded. I know, Mom, but I can't just stand by and do nothing while someone suffers. And I won't let anyone hurt me, or you. At that precise moment, a new worry loomed over them. Lucas's fame was beginning to spread beyond the hospital walls. The media were starting to talk about the miracle child, and with curiosity would soon come covetousness. The real challenge was no longer just controlling his powers, but surviving in a world that might want to exploit them. And in the shadows, those who had already heard of Lucas Harper were beginning to prepare their approach. Lucas Harper's name had now spread beyond the walls of St. Mary's Hospital. Journalists were calling him a miracle child, and social media was ablaze with videos and anonymous testimonials. Emily had done everything she could to protect her son, but she knew it was impossible to remain hidden any longer. One afternoon, while Lucas was discreetly practicing his powers in the hospital garden, a black car suddenly pulled up in front of the entrance. 2 men in suits got out, quick and determined, and walked towards him with a menacing look. Emily felt her heart clench. Lucas, stay behind me, she whispered, but her son was already focused. The men stopped a few meters away. One of them stepped forward and spoke in an icy voice. We know what you can do, boy. And we want to take you, for the good of the world. Lucas felt a shiver run down his spine. He immediately understood that these were not well-intentioned. A powerful energy surged within him, a force he had never felt before. He took a deep breath and, with a slow but deliberate movement, extended his hands toward the men. An invisible barrier seemed to form. The two men retreated, unable to advance, struck by an energy they could neither understand nor counter. The earth trembled slightly beneath their feet, and even the trees in the garden seemed to shudder under Lucas's power. Emily, trembling but filled with wonder, watched her son open his eyes. "You can't hurt us," he said in a firm, calm, but unwavering voice. The men were thrown backward, as if repelled by an invisible force, and fell to the ground, unable to get up immediately. Silence fell again, heavy and charged. Emily ran to Lucas and hugged him. "My God! Lucas, you're incredible," she sobbed. But this success came at a price. Lucas was exhausted, trembling with fatigue and tension. His face was pale, and he almost collapsed into his mother's arms. Emily felt a chilling fear. Each use of his power drained him, and each challenge became more difficult than the last. This confrontation marked a turning point. Lucas understood that his gift was not just a miracle, but an immense responsibility. Every life he saved, every injustice he prevented, brought him closer to a destiny he had not chosen but had to accept. As night fell on St. Mary's, Emily and Lucas stayed together, huddled close, aware that the outside world was both fascinating and dangerous. But they knew one thing: as long as they were united, no obstacle, no enemy, no danger could stop them. And in Lucas's heart, one certainty burned brighter than ever: he was destined to perform miracles, to protect those who could not defend themselves, and to change the lives of thousands of people, even if the price was his own exhaustion. A few weeks had passed since the ordeal in the hospital garden. Lucas Harper had begun to gain more control over his power, but each use drained him of incredible energy. Emily was still by his side, watching over him with constant vigilance, aware that the slightest misstep could put her son in danger. One morning, an alarm sounded throughout the city of Riverdale. An industrial accident had just occurred at the chemical plant near the city center. An explosion had caused a massive fire, trapping dozens of people inside. Sirens wailed, and overwhelmed firefighters struggled to evacuate the workers. Emily looked at Lucas, worry etched on her face. "Lucas, they need you. Can you?" Lucas nodded, determined. This was no longer about experimenting in a garden or saving a single isolated patient. This time, dozens of lives were at stake, and he had to act. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and focused. A soft, warm light emanated from his hands, spreading like an invisible wave around the factory. The flames, which had been devouring everything in their path, began to recede as if repelled by an invisible force. The smoke thinned, and the workers, dazed but unharmed, were able to make their way to the exit safely. The firefighters, incredulous, watched as the flames subsided as if by a miracle, while Lucas, at the heart of it all, struggled to maintain this immense energy. Emily felt an intense fear. Lucas was exhausted, his legs were trembling, and he was breathing heavily. "Lucas, stop if you have to," she begged, her voice breaking. But Lucas shook his head. "I can't, not this time, not them." A final surge of energy erupted from his hands, and the fire was completely extinguished. The workers were evacuated unharmed, and the firefighters fell to their knees, speechless at what they had just witnessed. Lucas then collapsed into his mother's arms, exhausted but alive. Emily, in tears, held him close, whispering, "You saved lives, you're a true miracle." But in Lucas's heart, a truth was taking root. His power was immense, but the world was beginning to notice. The media, scientists, and even mysterious forces now had their eyes on him. And he knew he would soon have to face something far more dangerous than a fire: those who would exploit his gift for dark purposes. For the moment, however, there had been a miracle, and for the first time in a long time, Lucas and Emily were able to breathe deeply, aware that, despite the hardships, they could accomplish the impossible. And in the silence of the night, as the town of Riverdale caught its breath, Lucas Harper promised himself that every life he saved in the future would be a promise to never give up, even in the face of the greatest danger. Since the factory fire, Lucas Harper's name had been echoing throughout the town and even beyond. Newspapers referred to him as Riverdale's miracle child, social media was flooded with videos showcasing his powers, and scientists were trying to explain the unthinkable. But where the light shines, shadows lurk. One night, as Lucas and Emily were finally asleep after weeks of exhaustion, an unusual noise broke the silence. Masked figures slipped into the hospital through a side entrance, carefully avoiding cameras and guards. Their objective was clear: to kidnap Lucas and exploit his powers for unknown purposes. Emily felt a premonition. She stood up silently and approached Lucas's room. Her heart pounding, she saw the intruders near the door. Before they could act, Lucas, awake despite his fatigue, placed a hand on his chest and focused his energy. A soft but powerful light enveloped the room, and the intruders were thrown against the walls, unable to move forward. "Not here," Lucas whispered, his voice trembling but firm. The men straightened, stunned, unable to comprehend the invisible force that was repelling them. They retreated, disoriented and terrified, as Lucas slowly advanced toward them, an aura of power emanating from every gesture. Emily clung to her son, tears welling in her eyes. "Lucas, you're amazing, but be careful." Lucas nodded. "I know, Mom. I have to protect." He raised his hands and, with intense concentration, made the threat disappear. The intruders fell to the ground, unable to move, then fled, terrified and helpless. The next day, Riverdale authorities investigated the incident, but no trace of the intruders was found. Lucas knew, however, that this was only the beginning. Those who coveted his power were numerous and determined. And he understood that his miracles wouldn't always be enough. He would have to learn to anticipate, to protect himself, and to use his gift strategically. Despite the fear and fatigue, Lucas felt a new strength within him. Each ordeal, each danger faced, only reinforced his determination. He now knew that his power was not a simple gift, it was a responsibility, a shield against injustice, and a weapon to protect those he loved. Emily, holding her son close, understood that they were at the dawn of a new era. An era where the world would discover Lucas Harper's true potential, and where every miracle would be a promise of light in the darkness. But in the city's shadows, those who had been watching Lucas were already preparing their next move. And the battle to protect the miracle boy was only just beginning. The town of Riverdale had never seemed so peaceful. The residents went about their daily lives, unaware of the imminent danger. Since the incident in the hospital room, Lucas Harper and his mother, Emily, had been on high alert. Every night, Lucas practiced controlling his power, but he knew its limits had not yet been fully explored. An alarm suddenly sounded across the city, a thunderous explosion shook the industrial district. Clouds of black smoke rose into the sky, and the sirens wailed once more. Lucas understood immediately, this was no accident. Those who coveted his power were making their move. Emily followed him, panicked. "Lucas, this time it's huge, they're going to destroy everything." Lucas took a deep breath, feeling his energy concentrate in every fiber of his body. "I can't wait, they don't know who they're dealing with." When he arrived, he saw men armed with unknown devices, seemingly controlling fire and destruction. Lucas understood he had to act quickly, but cautiously. He raised his hands and unleashed a wave of invisible energy that swept across the area, repelling the attackers and protecting the civilians. The flames receded, the explosions extinguished as if smothered by a mysterious force. But the attackers were numerous, better equipped, and prepared to resist. Lucas felt his strength waning, his energy almost exhausted. Emily, terrified, cried out, "Lucas, stop if you have to." No. He couldn't. Not this time. Every life mattered. Every heartbeat deserved to be protected. Lucas focused all his energy, his hands ablaze with a blinding light, and created an invisible shield that enveloped the entire area. The attackers were thrown back, unable to approach, while the flames vanished completely, leaving the area untouched. When the light faded, Lucas collapsed, exhausted but alive. Emily ran to him, hugging her son tightly. "You saved the whole neighborhood, my darling, you're a true miracle." But Lucas knew this victory came at a price. Each massive use of his power drained him almost completely, and the forces that coveted him would learn from this confrontation. The battle to protect Riverdale had only just begun. That night, Emily watched her son sleep, his breath still ragged. She knew he would have to grow up faster than other children, learn to fight against injustice and evil, and accept that his gift would never be just an isolated miracle, it was a weapon and a light in the darkness. And while the city regained a fragile calm, in the shadows, Lucas's enemies were already preparing their next attack, bigger, more dangerous, ready to test the limits of the miracle boy. Riverdale seemed to finally breathe a sigh of relief after recent events, but Lucas Harper knew that tranquility was an illusion. The forces that coveted his power were cunning and patient. They were waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and that moment was approaching. One evening, as Lucas and Emily watched the city from their apartment window, sirens wailed again. This time, it wasn't an isolated explosion. Several neighborhoods were reporting fires, building collapses, and mass casualties. A coordinated attack, on a scale that no human force could contain. Emily hugged Lucas tightly, her heart pounding. "My God. Lucas, this time, it's huge." Lucas took a deep breath, feeling his energy surge like never before. He knew this would be his greatest challenge. He closed his eyes and visualized each neighborhood in danger, each life he had to protect. He focused his power, his hands radiating a warm, powerful light that spread throughout the city. Outside, the flames receded, the buildings trembled slightly but did not collapse, and the terrified inhabitants were able to take shelter. Every move Lucas made seemed to control the chaos, repelling the destructive forces with supernatural precision. But this time, the attack was too widespread. His energy was beginning to wane. Lucas felt dizzy, his legs trembled, and his vision blurred. Emily, panicked, screamed, "Lucas, stop if you have to." No. He couldn't give up. Innocent lives depended on him. So, in a final effort, Lucas focused all the energy he could muster, illuminating the entire city with a brilliant, pure light. The flames were extinguished, the collapses stopped, the inhabitants protected. The whole city seemed suspended in a miraculous moment, as if time itself bowed before him. Then, finally, calm returned. The light disappeared, and Lucas collapsed into Emily's arms, drained, almost unconscious. The townspeople rushed forward, seeing the miraculous boy save the entire town. Shouts of joy, tears, and applause filled the streets. Emily was crying, holding Lucas close. "You did the impossible, my baby, you're a true miracle." But Lucas knew this triumph came at a heavy price. Each use of his power brought him closer to its limits, and he now understood that his gift was not infinite. The forces that had attacked him would never give up, and new challenges would come to test his strength, courage, and determination. For the first time, Lucas looked at the city he had saved and fully understood the responsibility that rested on his shoulders. He wasn't just a miracle child, he was a guardian, a protector, a light in the darkness. And he knew he had to continue growing, learning, and preparing for the battles to come. In the shadows, however, Lucas's enemies were regrouping. They had witnessed his power and now knew it would take more than armed men to defeat him. The coming storm would be bigger, more dangerous, and it would test Lucas Harper to his absolute limits. The town of Riverdale was on high alert. The forces that had tried to capture Lucas Harper were regrouping for a massive, coordinated attack. This time, their plan was clear: use fear, chaos, and destruction to force Lucas to fully reveal himself, then exploit him to their advantage. Emily squeezed her son's hand, aware of the magnitude of the battle that lay ahead. "Lucas, this time it's huge, you'll have to give it your all." Lucas nodded, his gaze determined. "I know, Mom, but I won't let anyone hurt this city, or you." When the attack began, the streets descended into chaos. Explosions, flames, overturned vehicles, and screams of panic filled the air. Lucas knew he couldn't protect every corner of the city in conventional ways. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and focused all his energy, far beyond anything he had ever done before. An intense light burst from his hands, radiating throughout the city. The ground trembled slightly under the magnitude of his power. The flames were instantly extinguished, the fragile buildings stabilized, and the inhabitants protected as if surrounded by an invisible but impenetrable shield. But the attackers weren't just human. Experimental devices and destructive machines sprang into action, testing Lucas's limits. Every fraction of a second counted. Every movement of his hands repelled explosions, collapsing walls, and dangerous projectiles. Emily, standing behind him, sensed her son's extreme fatigue. "Lucas, stop if you have to." He shook his head, focused. "No. Not this time, not them, not Riverdale." With a final burst of energy, Lucas unleashed a surge of power more potent than ever before. Light enveloped the entire city, halting the destruction in its tracks. The machines froze, the flames vanished, and the attackers were thrown back, unable to continue. A heavy yet soothing silence fell over the miraculously saved city. Lucas collapsed into Emily's arms, exhausted but alive. She wept, holding him close, unable to find the words. "You saved everyone, my baby, you're a true miracle." That moment sealed the truth. Lucas Harper was not just a child with extraordinary powers. He was a protector, a guardian, a light capable of confronting the darkness and saving lives at the cost of his own energy. The residents of Riverdale, having witnessed the miracle, began to gather in the streets, applauding and celebrating the boy who had defied fate and the forces of evil. The astonished journalists and scientists understood that what they had just seen defied all logic. For Lucas and Emily, it was also a new beginning. They knew that danger would always exist, that those who coveted her power would return. But for the first time, they understood that as long as they were together, they could face any threat. Lucas Harper, the miracle boy, closed his eyes, feeling the fatigue but also the profound satisfaction of having accomplished the impossible. In his heart, he knew his mission was only just beginning. And as night enveloped Riverdale, one certainty burned brightly within him: as long as he breathed, he would be the light that protected those who could not defend themselves, and the world had just witnessed a true miracle.